Life Stories Live.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first broadcast of the new year on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. It's great to have you with us tonight, and I'd like to wish you all a very happy and blessed new year. May it be a wonderful one. May you see some wonderful things in your life this year. So we're back again here on Life Stories Worldwide. And if you need any help, you can see our contact number on the screen. If you need prayer, just call us on +44 794 355 0287. You can also go to our website, lifestoriesworldwide.com, where you can find out lots of information about all the different broadcasts that are going out. So, as I say, we've been doing this work since March 2020. We started when the lockdown came for the pandemic. We've only missed one Monday evening since then, and that was just this recently over Christmas. But tonight we start with a wonderful speaker from California. We have John Patter, who is with us tonight. John has had a prophetic ministry to different countries, to different nations, different individuals, different states in the USA. And John's heart is to see all of God's children fulfill their divine destiny and calling. And John's hope is to see a victorious church walking in the power and the glory of God. That's John's desire. And so tonight, we welcome John, and I'll ask you, if you're on any of these, like on Zoom or Facebook or YouTube, please contact your friends. Please tell them about this story that's going on tonight on Life Stories Worldwide. And so I'm going to hand over to John now to share his story. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Alan, and Lord bless you. Hello to everybody. I want to say that I'm very honored and I'm humbled to ask to give my story, a story with the Lord that started as I thought about this 45 years ago. I was a young boy and I was invited to go to a Christian camp in the mountains outside of San Diego. I wasn't against the things of God. I'd go to church with my grandmother. But on this occasion, I went up there to be with my friends and to be honest, the girls. I was a teenager. And we'd play games, volleyball, etc. But that evening, they were having a get-together, a meeting, I remember, in an A-frame building. And it was a meeting, a service. And I walked in with a group of friends. And I remember there was a lady playing a guitar on the stage, just strumming it. And before I knew it, I was out. I didn't know what happened, but I found myself walking on a dirt road. And I still remember the dirt road, and each side of the dirt road was lined with tall pine trees, very dense forest. I couldn't see through them. And the sky was clear, it was sunny, and I was just walking. And I remember coming to a Y in the road. And a feeling it just so overcame me that I knew I had to get somewhere. I don't know what that somewhere was. I didn't know whether to turn to the right, go down the path on the right, or the path on the left. And I could see it was still dirt roads lined by pine trees. And I fell down on my knees and prostrate on the ground, and I started to weep uncontrollably. And this went on for a little time, and I heard a voice in front of me. And it said, "John, what's wrong?" And I remember as I looked up from the ground, I saw two golden brass shiny slippers, a white gown, and I started to look up, and I felt the hand touch me on my left shoulder, and immediately I stood straight up and I was looking at Jesus face to face. He is a little taller. He said, "John, what's wrong?" And I said, "Lord, I know I have to get somewhere, but I don't know whether to go to the left or the right." He said, "John, follow me." And I remember we turned and we started to walk down the path on the right. Again, it was a beautiful day. The pine trees, I still remember those, a dirt road, and we just chatted as we walked. And I don't remember the whole conversation, but as we were walking, he turned and he said to me, he said, "John, there'll be other whys that you're going to come to in your life." He said, "You may not always see me, but no, I'll never leave you, nor will I forsake you. I will direct you which way to go, either to the left or the right." And as we continued to walk, he disappeared. And I was very joyous. And I continued to walk, still the pine trees. And after a while, I came up to another Y in the road. And again, that feeling overcame me. I didn't know if I should go to the right or the left, but I knew there was, the word I would use now is a destiny I have to reach, a calling to get there, as I think about it now. It was an impression given by the Lord. And I fell on my knees again. I started to cry, but then I remembered. So the Lord said he'd guide me. So I stood up and I stood there. And I said, like a prayer, "Lord, I don't know which way to go." And I felt to turn right and go down the path on the right.
Life Stories.
So I did. And I started to walk down that path, still lined by more pine trees. Sunny day. And after a while, I knew I picked the correct path and I was walking the right dirt road. And as I continued to walk, the Lord reappeared next to me as I walking next to me. And he said, "See, John, I told you I'd guide you and I'd never leave you, nor would I forsake you." And immediately I found myself on the floor at that meeting hall, crying profusely with my friends standing around me. They didn't know what happened to me. They just saw me fall out. A meeting had not started or anything. I didn't know what to say. I've never had an experience like that. So I didn't say anything to them right away. And I remember coming home a couple days later, walking through the front doors of my house, and I walked in, and my mother was washing dishes in the sink to the left. And I walked in, I said, hello. And she turned and looked at me, and I still remember she dropped the dish in her hand and said, what happened to you? You are glowing. So I told her what happened. That was the beginning of my journey with the Lord 45 years ago. Little did I know, when God does something like that, when he said there'd be other whys in the road, I've had plenty of those whys, and I've had to make the decision whether to go to the left or right and stand in faith that he would guide me. At that time in my life, my mom was married to a man because my dad had left us at an early age, moved out of state, married another woman. And he was not a very pleasant person, to say the least. And but something I could tell, things escalated in the household. There was something spiritual going on. So I tried to lay low. But I remember, since that experience, my brother would not even walk in my bedroom because he sensed there was something. I mean, the demonic, I didn't understand it then. I would cover my head and just cry out the name Jesus, and it would leave. So it was several years later, 3 years later, I was in high school. I had gotten my private pilot's license. I worked at a local gas station. I always loved aviation and wanted to fly and make a career out of it. And she left, divorced this man, and married another man, which was even worse. And I thought, I can't stay here. I'll join the Air Force, the United States Air Force. I'll get my college education, and I want to fly for the Air Force. And so I enlisted at that time in the United States Air Force. And I did have a girlfriend whom I'm still married to, my high school sweetheart, 39 years later. And I went in, I took a path I thought I should take, and I was what they call a fast burner. I was having my performance evaluations signed by generals, 2- and 3-star generals, and as a low enlisted person. Going to college at night. But then one day I came home from the office into my dorm room. I wasn't married yet. And I had that experience, and it changed me. But yet I walked into my room, and I hadn't been going to church. I hadn't been doing those things. And the presence of God was so strong in the room. It was a presence of awe, where I fell to my knees on the front of my bed. And the voice, it was almost audible. I don't think it was audible, but it was close. And the Lord said, John, I've called you. You need to make a decision. And I said, yes, Lord, I'll serve you. I'll do what you want me to do. Show me. And something happened to me then, because the next day I showed up at work, I was a different person. Everyone noticed it. And I was so hungry for the things of God. And I went to take my flight physical, and they said, your eyesight dropped. You can't be a pilot. And I thought, I don't want to stay in the Air Force if I can't be a pilot. But this calling, this sense, it just seemed like I should go into the ministry. And at that time, my girlfriend, my future wife, did not know the Lord. And I don't know why, even then, I started to fast and pray. And I said, Lord, I cannot marry this girl. I love her so much. A first love for 2 or 3 years. We had plans to get married, but I will not marry her until she gives, or unless she gives her heart to you. And I remember she drove up to visit me. I was up in north of Santa Barbara on the coast of California, beautiful station I was at, Vandenberg Air Force Base. She lived in San Diego. And we went to believe it or not, a large Christian meeting, thousands of people. And I remember at the end, the fellow on the stage said, I want to pray for people who want to receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit and power. And I raised both my hands, and I remember the power of God hit my fingertips and shot right through my body, and I did not let it go. I grabbed everything I could, and I started to speak in another language. And I don't know how long this went on for, but I remember when it was over with, there was an older lady behind me, and I didn't understand what this meant then.
Life Stories Live.
And she said, son, you got the double portion. Now, my future wife was standing there. She didn't understand any of this. And she went back home that night, drove home, but God did a miracle. When she went to sleep, to go to sleep that night in her room, God visited her, and she fell on the floor and gave her heart to the Lord. She moved up to base. We got married, but it was a why in the road. What do I do now, Lord? I can't fly. What is it? And that calling, I got involved in church up there, and things started to open for preaching and for ministry, and miracles were happening and started to operate then in the prophetic. I was only 20 years old. And so I went through, they said, well, you should be a pastor. So I went through all the schooling, and I got down to the very end. I was approved, ready to go to be ordained. And God said to me, John, I've not called you to be a pastor. I mean, it was very clear. I said, okay, Lord. But I knew to get out of the Air Force, so I served my term. It did not re-up, and we moved down to San Diego. And that started over 25 years in the marketplace. And God opened the door for me in the mortgage industry at the age of 25. And for the next 25, 30 years, that's what I did. And I was very successful at it. Very successful. But there was coming another Y in the road. And I would attend church. People would recognize the prophetic, and I was growing in it. God was doing amazing things. But then in 2008, at that time, I had established and started my own company, had my own agents, loan officers, doing very well. But the economy started to change for the worse. And in 2010, my wife and I had to close our company. I had peace about it. I knew God was in it. But things were so bad financially, I found myself in bankruptcy court. I thought, this is humiliating. I've been very successful, never late on a bill, very conscientious about investing, not overspending, and I'm standing in a bankruptcy court with my wife. I've served the Lord all those years. Maybe not perfectly. I don't want to give anyone that impression, because there were times, and some of you relate to this, where I've been hurt. Doors have been closed. People embrace the prophetic, but then not. And I thought to myself, I don't get it, Lord. I honestly don't get it. I know what I read in your word, and here I am standing here in a bankruptcy court. I'm pretty much getting ready to lose everything. So I closed that company. I had to. And that night at church, it was a great church. I learned a lot about the prophetic. Other branches were opened up from the prophetic was flowing, the glory of God. People were healed, delivered, saved. But I was sitting in the front row before the service, and I said, Lord, what do I do now? And a gentleman walked up to me. I didn't know him. He attended that church. He said, John, he introduced himself. He said, because he knew me, because I'd be up front. He said, I know you love aviation, and I've been a corporate pilot for 30 years. And I just felt since this morning, I should ask you, I want to open a company, Integrity Aviation Management, to help people acquire jet aircraft and to manage them. I know all about that, but I don't know about starting companies. Would you consider doing that? I thought, yes, I will do it. So we did. We started that company in 2010, but it never really did take off. And I have my thoughts about it. I've wondered. So in 2016, we had to close it. And I thought, here I am again, Lord, I just don't understand this. Where have I missed it somewhere? And I'll be really honest with you. At that point, we'd been making it financially, barely. We still have the house. Someone actually gave me a prophetic word. Said you would not lose the house. It's a miracle that I'm still in the house. It's by the grace of God that my wife and I, my family, are still here. And I thank him for that. But all this time, God was doing something with me. He had a plan. There was that destiny, that why in the road. I took the path I thought he called me on. He confirmed it many times. And as I think about it, those tall trees aligning alongside of the road, it was so dense. I really couldn't miss it. I could go off path a little bit, but so dense, it just kind of kept me. God kept me on the path, even though at times I wanted to jump off of it. I remember being out in the yard, working in the yard. And I thought, Lord, I don't understand. Do you not even love me anymore? I don't feel your presence. I have no ministry anymore. I'm not making money.